those who are joining us today. We are just introducing ourselves and our cats. And I will say, our furry companions are an unofficial part of our teams, my friends. They are there for our emotional support. So feel free to share about yours in the chat. All right. What have we been up to? This fundraising is organizing training series. You are here for part 2 of 3 of a 3-part series. So what we did the first session, we talked through confronting our fears about asking for money. We talked about setting fundraising goals. We talked about who in the heck do we ask? Who are the people that we can ask for money? How do we ask them? Do we beg? Do we post on social media every day? Do we cry? What do we do? And then we also talked about how do we formulate that ask? How do we make it very clear what the stakes are at hand, what their connection is to the stakes at hand, and what they can do to support? So any of those topics, go back into the recording that Ellie is posting in the chat. Today, where we are headed is focusing on building volunteer fundraising teams. That's turning our donors and our networks into fundraisers. The third part, and that's coming in September, you can register also in the link that Ellie shared, is talking about building a donor engagement ladder. So thinking about building leadership beyond our immediate networks. What's a fundraising team? What the heck are you talking about, Haley? That sounds so fancy, but what does it mean? A volunteer fundraising team is a structured group of fundraising volunteers. So they have a shared purpose and goals. For example, it could be $2,000 to raise in 7 days. They have interdependent roles. And what we mean by interdependent roles is if you are a part of the team, you are an integral part of hitting the goal. And at the same time, you are not the only person carrying the weight. So folks are really holding the weight collaboratively in terms of crafting the pitching asks, making our list of who we're going to ask, talking about what is our plan in those 7 to 10 days to hit our goal. And then finally, we have explicit norms for coordinating. So thinking about, do we get on a Signal thread together to chat regularly? Do we go in person at a coffee shop? What does that cadence, rhythm, and the ways that we interact with each other look like? And we're going to cover a lot of these different topics today. When we talk about a team, size sometimes matters in this world. We say a minimum of 3 people for a couple of reasons. One is that inevitably life sometimes can happen. And if one of the 3 of us has to come down, at least there's 2 of us that can sort of pick up the weight, recruit more folks, and carry the campaign to success. The second reason for a minimum of 3 people, there's actually some social psychology that says that if there's at least 3 people in the conversation table, it gives us the ability to reflect, to ideate, to actively listen a little more than in a one-on-one scenario where if somebody's talking, we're kind of thinking, how do I keep this conversation going? How do I make it not awkward? How do I keep things moving? We say ideally 4 to 6, just because the more the merrier. It's a very sweet number that keeps things intimate as you're starting and learning and inevitably having little messes that you make along the way before you scale up. One example of an organization that really has volunteer fundraising at its heart and at its initial legacy when they started in 2012, coming out of the Occupy movement, is For the Many. They're a state-based, local-based organization in New York's Hudson Valley area. They recruit volunteers, mostly college students, for 7-day campaigns to fundraise in their networks twice per year. In the summer of 2020, we all remember that. That was a time of some peak mobilization like we're experiencing right now, right? They raised over $260,000 from 5,500 donations in 7 days. So just to show you about the potential power that we're talking about when we're thinking about turning our donors into fundraisers. Activity time, y'all. Okay, I would love if you put a yes or an emoji in the chat if you've ever thought about any of these following things. I want you to put a yes in the chat if you've ever thought, I feel like I've tapped my networks in my fundraising efforts. I feel like I've asked all the people I can ask. All right. Seeing some soft emojis here. Yes, relatable content. Put a yes or emoji in the chat if you have a fundraising goal that you don't think you can achieve alone. Sometimes our needs are bigger than what we can do as just one person. Yes, seeing lots of yeses. Put a yes or emoji in the chat. If you think to yourself, I just don't want to fundraise alone. Fundraising's more fun when we do it together. It's a sad pile of to-dos and anxiety if I don't have people around me to help me out. Yup. Beautiful. Okay. Yes in the chat if you're thinking yourself, I don't know who to ask to join my team. Do I ask the hot Trader Joe's store clerk? Do I ask my mom? Who do I ask? Who the heck do I ask? Put the yes in the chat if you don't know how to ask someone to join your team. Do you beg? Do you cry? What do you do? How do you ask? And then finally, put a yes or emoji in the chat if you don't know how to support a volunteer fundraising team. You're like, what the heck does that even mean? What am I supposed to do? Why am I here? Congrats, y'all are human. And today we're gonna be covering these things. So first, what we're gonna do, we're gonna identify potential team members within your own networks. We're then gonna craft asks for people to join your team. Then we're gonna learn how to apply the snowflake organizing model to your own team so that there is the ability to scale. We'll talk about hosting a team kickoff that inspires commitment and action within your team. And finally, we're going to talk about providing ongoing support and community to support your team in achieving your collective goals. Okay, friends, little poll. When we think about the types of power that we can have on the left, which is strongest? We got three options here. We got wealth, we got visibility, we've got people. Wealth, we're going to define here as the ability to amass large sums of financial assets. Money, land, all the things that the richer people in the world have and hold. Visibility, the ability to reach thousands or millions of people with persuasive messaging. Hashtag influencers. And then finally, what we have is people, the ability to organize people into leadership roles at scale. I would love for you to share in the chat what you think. Which of these three powers do we on the left have the most of? All right. I'm seeing some answers for people. This is not a close vote, y'all, and y'all are quite right. It is people. Let's talk about why really quickly. Why not wealth? And we're specifically looking at a lens of comparing working class people and wealthy people when we're thinking about making our asks. The first thing is that working class people donate a higher percentage of their income. So when we think about, you get all these, sweet little articles that say, oh, this billionaire gave $500,000. It's like, that is a lot of money. $500,000 in an absolute sense is a lot of money, but that compared to us everyday folk, that's pennies. A second piece to think about is that the no difference in fundraising asks for working class people versus wealthy people. They say yes to fundraising asks that are made of them at the same rate. And finally, wealthy people are just asked way more. They're way more inundated for reasons that are completely obvious to all of us, right? We're looking to fundraise a lot. They've got a lot of money. Why don't we all just ask them? And this is not to say we should not be asking wealthy people to donate to us or to join our fundraising teams. What this is saying is we should widen our bench for potential donors and fundraisers, because at the end of the day, our job as fundraisers is to invite people to join us in donating and fundraising. They know what's best for them. They know what they can do, and they know what they want to do. And so all of a sudden, if we open up beyond wealth, we got some more options here. Why not visibility? And for those that were at the first session, you already know these answers. They're already told to you. You're going to be star students here. What percentage of people give from seeing a social media ask? So if I post on my story right now, hey, I have got this GoFundMe going on. I'm looking to raise $500. Link in bio, link in the story. What percentage of people that see that are going to give? 0 to 100 are acceptable range. 1%, we got some 1%. What other guesses do we have here? 3 to 6%, 3%, 0.5%, 2%, 0.5%, 1 in 1,000, 0.1%. And now there could be some of us in the room or some of us that are listening to this that are ourselves influencers, hundreds of thousands of followers, whatever else. The numbers game might work for those of us that fit into that bucket. But for most of us, where your followers are your friends and your family, and maybe some spam accounts, probably not where we hold our power. Another question, a guessing game, what % of people give from being asked face to face? So if I turn to Ellie and I say, hey, Ellie, I would love if you could contribute $10 a day to this cause that I care about. What is the likelihood that Ellie says yes to me? Again, relevant range 0 to 100. Yes, Kelsey, that social media ask is low. 50%, 20%, 40 to 60%, 33%, 70%, 25%. I love when guesses are all over the place because we're all learning things. And it's a big debate, I will say, in the grassroots fundraising community. Some will say it's 1 in 3. You want to be prepared that people might have a strong enough connection to you, so you want to just give a very lowball number. Other folks say, hey, in practice, if I know people, there's a 1 in 2 chance they're going to give because they trust me. So I leave you with that relevant range, but regardless of whether it is 1 in 3 or 1 in 2, there is a significant difference from 1 in 1,000. Why people? Everyone has a network, and we are a trusted source for people in those networks. On average, and this comes from deep research of Dr. Vanessa Bones in You Have More Influence Than You Think, if you're looking for citations, on average, volunteer fundraisers only have to go to half the people we originally thought to reach our fundraising goal. What does that mean in practice? It means that people say yes more than we expect, and people give more than we expect when we look at the whole picture. And we can train others to fundraise like we did. How does that work in practice? How do we motivate people? There is a whole set of industries of how do we motivate volunteers? How do we motivate organizers? How do we get people to do things that they haven't done before, that they're fearful of, that they're unsure of the outcomes? So to perceive that we have choices, me as a volunteer fundraiser, do I have the choice of who I reach out to when I build my list of people, how I speak to them when I'm making the ask of them, when I make the ask of them? And so the way that this shows up in volunteer fundraising, and we'll talk about this in greater detail, is thinking about both people want to feel a part of the team and connected to the team. They also want to feel a deeper part of their communities by making these fundraising asks. We're afraid of being embarrassed. Instead of being embarrassed, we want to feel inspired. And so confidence is actually a really big one when it comes to building volunteer fundraising teams, because many of us have a lot of anxiety about money, and a lot of us haven't ever fundraised before in our lives. So today, as we go through this training, we're going to give love to all 3 of these particular characteristics with a special amount of love to confidence as you're building out your volunteer fundraising teams. How does it work in the labor movement? Why are we bringing up union organizing? Because labor organizing has a lot scarier of stakes than your good old grassroots fundraising campaign. When they're looking for leaders, they're looking for people that can get a mass amount of others to take risk that could include losing your jobs, that include losing your lives. A lot bigger stakes than when our friends say no to our fundraising asks. And so we start from here when thinking about leadership identification. How do they do it? How do they go against all odds to win the majority of a workplace to be able to unionize? And so the way that they do it is they use what's called a structure test on a particular individual. So they are assessing from somebody, not who's raising their hand and saying, oh, I'll be a volunteer fundraiser. They're looking for somebody that meets the characteristics of somebody that has influence over others, that has follow through. And so what they do is they offer tasks of escalating risk to potential organizing leaders to see, are you our organic leader or are you not? And so the examples include wearing t-shirts with union emblems, getting a majority of people on the floor to wear those shirts at work just to kind of signal, Okay, we're in this. Are we not in this? Getting people to sign petitions to get to a majority, attending rallies, striking. So the way that looks, and this is inspired by Jane McKelvey, who has done a lot of research and work specifically in her lifetime, may she rest in power, specifically on leadership identification and building. So thinking about who are possible leaders that we should focus attention on. So it's not everybody. It's not, I mean, maybe the Trader Joe's clerk person could be for you, but it's not necessarily grabbing anybody and everybody. It's thinking about who specifically meets the needs of what you're looking for in a team member. Invitation, what should your first conversation with them look like, which we're going to get into in crafting that ask for them to join your team. How do they show us they're serious and vice versa? That's talking about the structure test to see if they are willing and able to commit to that ask. And then the ongoing support, which we'll get toward that at the end, is thinking about how do we build that ongoing leadership development so that not only are they leaders, but they can train other leaders. Okay, that was really nice, right? But at the same time, how does this apply to fundraising? We're talking about, I'm looking to raise $2,000 from my people in 7 days. In fundraising, there are 3 particular traits that we are looking for because we're not looking for the levels of, are we going to be able to unionize? We are looking for, I'm looking to raise a concrete amount of dollars from a concrete amount of people in 7 to 10 days. 3 traits. The first is passion. Does this person believe in the mission or cause? This one's especially important with peer-to-peer fundraising because oftentimes the #1 reason that a person donates to our campaign is because they care about us, not necessarily the mission. I could ask Ellie, hey, my neighborhood is looking to raise some funds for a local yard cleanup. Will you donate 10 bucks? Ellie will probably say yes to me because Ellie is committed to our relationship, our friendship, our, relationship as colleagues. Not necessarily because they live nowhere near my neighborhood in West Oakland. And I mean, I'm sure they would prefer trash be picked up than not be picked up, but it's probably not one of their top 5 causes that they care about. So do they believe in the cause above and beyond you? Second is, can this person fundraise in their network and then coach others to do the same? And we'll talk about what the responsibility that we recommend for volunteer fundraisers look like, but can they literally make a list of 20 people, craft their own fundraising pitch, make a plan on how they're going to reach out to them? And third, and very related to ability, is follow through. So it's thinking about, will they fundraise their networks and encourage others to do the same? And because we're not as serious as labor organizers here, we don't have to do very fancy structure tests. We can think about it based on prior experiences, like, oh, I've organized a campaign with this person in the past, and I know that they have really great follow through when they make commitments. It could be, oh, I know this person has fundraised for their local PTA before, so there's some evidence there. It could be direct questions that you have in conversation with them, or it can be other data that you find relevant. So as a starting point, and throughout this training today, we're going to do tiny little exercises to get you started so that you feel like you're not starting from a blank slate. It's not, how do I get started? It's, how do I continue doing this? So we're going to make our own little structure test for fundraising. Let's share in the chat. What's one question you can ask someone in your network that tests either their passion, their ability, or follow through? Skylar, have you ever done fundraising before? Yeah, absolutely. Check if they've done it. Ask them why they're doing this. Absolutely. Why did you donate if they donated the campaign? Why are you excited about this cause? If you see them posting on social media about it, like a lot of our people do, why are you posting about social media? Tell me what the organization means to them. Yes, absolutely. What are the funds used for? Yeah, kind of talking through with them what they're used for to help them learn, engage, what they're excited about for it. The purpose of having these questions is for you to tangibly learn Like, what's your capacity like over the next month? Yeah, that's great, Mina. Just thinking about in terms of timing, if you have a rapid response fundraising campaign you're looking to do, if they're taking care of their mom for the next month, that might not be a great person to join right this second. You could kind of write a note that maybe later. Can you remember a time someone asked you for money? Ooh, yes. We love an agitational question. Spot on. The reason that we do this is to make it concrete to ourselves and also perhaps to them to start putting that seed there that they could be a potential fundraising team member. So some other ones that we offer for you all, take what you want, leave what you don't. Why do you give or why do you care about this issue? Who else do you think could be asked for money? Can you introduce me to them? Could you give me advice on X thing related to the campaign? Could you give me feedback on my pitch? Recommended commitments for a team member. Y'all know your people best. You know your needs best. Play around with this as you see fit. But time and time again at Donor Organizer Hub, these commitments that are asked from team members tend to kind of hit the mark of both the commitment level that we need to be successful, but also not asking way, way, way too much like a full-time job as development staff for an organization of somebody. The first one is making a list of at least 20 people to ask. Ask, not give. They're going to ask 20 people, and, as we were talking about earlier, about 7 to 10 of them will give. That they participate in developing the goals with you all individually and collectively. Crafting their own fundraising pitch. And this is key. We live in a world of copy paste. I love copying and pasting more than anything else. Oftentimes we want to make things really easy for people, but the way that I pitch something to somebody is going to look incredibly different than how Ellie's going to pitch to somebody. We're different people. We're part of different communities. And when we're talking about direct asks, we're not talking about robotic asks. We're talking about what lives into our values and what connects to our people. Prioritizing direct asks. So calls, texts, voice memos, over the good old email and social media blasts. This is not to say don't do email or don't do social media. What we recommend for folks, and again, y'all make your own edits, you know your people best. We see email and social media blasts on average being most effective when it's kind of the last juice to squeeze. You've done your direct asks, you've gone through and gotten certain pledges and commitments, but you still have a little bit to go in your goal. Sure, send the BCC, send the social media blasts, but look for people that are prioritizing those more direct asks. And finally, we recommend, because we want to build out our fundraising teams, especially if we're doing this beyond a one-time campaign, is thinking about who can identify 1 to 3 people in their network who also have passion, ability, and follow through. Building your list. How do you do it? For those of us that were here last week, we talked about building a big old list. Everybody you know. Ellie posted a list builder exercise with Donor Organizer Hub where you're really just kind of shaking every little surface in your apartment to find who the heck do I know? Where did I go to summer camp? Who did I work with 10 years ago? For identifying your volunteer fundraising team, we actually recommend the opposite, being a little more selective. Starting with 5 people that come to mind, and then building that over time. And the reason that we suggest quality over quantity here is because you want to be able to identify with those potential people, what are their skills, what are their strengths, and what are their connections that could support you in being able to reach a fundraising campaign goal that you might set. So again, we're going to do a little sprint activity here. I'm going to put a very quick timer of 1 minute for you to write down 2 to 3 people you'd like to ask to join your team. You got a minute. All right, my friends. Now we're going to enter the second part of our build our list sprint, okay? What you're going to do next is you're going to select one of them where you're going to list their strengths, their skills, and their connections. I'm going to start a little timer now. All right, my friends. Final step of this. For that one person, share in the chat. What are their skills, strengths, connections? You can keep it short and sweet. Reminder, this is a public training, so, don't need to share too much of identifying info, but what are some of the skills, strengths, and connections of that one person that you identified? Share in the chat. Always networking. We like that in a fundraising team member now, don't we? What else? Outgoing. We love our shy guys too, but we also love our outgoing ones. Magnetic person, extrovert. Ability to meet people where they are. No fear. Ooh, I like the sound of this person. Could teach me a thing or two. Already a hustler. Yes, absolutely. Empathetic. Wide social circle of like-minded people. Experienced with the ask. Enjoy sharing food and drink with friends. Yes. So the beautiful thing about what y'all are sharing here is majority of this doesn't require prior experience in fundraising, right? And that's something that you can lift to your people. And so as we move into making the asks to join, let's talk about what our goals are here when we're asking people to join our fundraising team. At the top, we have strong yes or strong no. Not a weak yes, not a maybe. Why are we embracing a strong no? We embrace a strong no because not everybody's going to say yes to us. We learned this last session that not everybody is going to feel that they can and that they want to donate to us. Same thing goes with volunteering as a fundraiser with us. What we actually want to avoid, and oftentimes we see this when people come to us at Donor Organizer Hub, is these kind of murky conversations where people are like, I don't know, maybe, and people are like, well, I think they want to keep the conversation going, right? And the truth is, you actually don't know until you parse it apart with them. And the way to do that is making it personalized, a one-to-one ask. I was a really nice person last session, and I said, okay, you can totally do email and social media blasts for fundraising. Just know the trade-offs, that people are less likely to donate. In this case, I have never personally seen a successful fundraising team be built primarily through indirect asks. Identifying people specifically when they previously maybe not have experience in fundraising. It's a higher stakes ask than just, hey, can you give me 25 bucks? Taking the time to acknowledge their skills, their connections, and why they could be useful to you is important to make time for. And what you can do in your time together is throw in some of those structure test questions that you developed. Why did they give? Why do they care about the issue? What advice do they have on their fundraising efforts? We all love giving advice. Let's admit it. It just makes us feel so smart and fun and charming. And so then it becomes a question of, okay, that's a nice little framework, Haley. So we're trying to get to a hard yes or a hard no. How do we get there? For those of us that were here at the last session, when we talked about how to do a fundraising pitch, you're going to notice a very similar outline here, except the ask is to join the team instead of donating to us. So key components. Why does this matter? Of all the things that are happening in the world right now, why does this cause matter to you and to the world around you? Why do we need to act now? Especially important if you're talking about a rapid response fundraising campaign. Why not 3 months from now? Why not 3 years from now? Why right this second? This is a big one, and this is probably where you want to spend the heart of your conversation, is why they should be a part of it based on their values, not yours, and based on their skills, strengths, and connections that you've shared, that you've reflected on. So for example, if I was to go, hey, Ellie, I know that you really care about youth organizing, and this organization that I'm raising for is looking to do exactly that. They're looking to scale up and train thousands of young people, not only for this election cycle, but for years to come. You are the most meticulous person I know. You keep people big picture organized in the project plan and in the details. Will you join us? So really thinking about, how do I tailor it to Ellie? How do you tailor it to this particular person to meet their needs? What do you need? And this gets back to their role and commitments that we were talking about earlier. Being explicit. Hey, we're making a team of people and we're going to build a list, each of 20 people that we're going to ask. We're going to develop our own pitches. We're going to make some direct asks of them. We're going to then go directly fundraise for 7 to 10 days and debrief, and then identify other people to make asks. Will you join that? Be explicit about what you're expecting from them. By when do you need an answer? For some of us, we are fundraising very rapidly. We need to know ASAP. You're holding us up if you're like, can I think about it over the night or over the weekend? So let them know explicitly, I need a hard yes or I need a hard no today. I love and respect you. And that's why I am making it very clear that I need an immediate answer. People can honor that. And also, if you can wait over the weekend, let people have the weekend to think about it, to really sit with it. I'm too busy. Who's heard that? Who said that? I'm too busy. I'm too busy. So this is where we're getting into the purgatory that we were talking about, where people are maybe yes, I don't know. People don't always say yes to our asks right away, not because they can't do it and don't want to do it, but because they don't necessarily believe that they can do it. And your role in being the asker is to really help parse out, if they say no, what is their reason for no? Is it a strong no, or is it a weak maybe? I don't know. Because oftentimes when we say that we're busy, it actually is a little bit of a mask for us to say, I don't know if I can do this. And so your role as the asker, if Ellie was to come to me, I don't know, I'm kind of busy, I could say something like, oh, I feel you, like this stage of capitalism, things are rough out there. Something that I do to help make this manageable for me is I really kind of plan this out where it's going to be only a few hours a week over the next month. I block off time on my calendar. I know that we have similar kinds of schedules, so happy to chat with you about that. I just want to check in though, what's holding you back? How can I be supportive? Ellie might say, I've never fundraised before. And then my role for Ellie then becomes, honestly, just revving them up and reminding them that they can do this. That's not a problem. We totally expect that for a lot of people. Most people, in fact, it's going to be their first time fundraising. I'm going to provide training for folks. Donor Organizer Hub has this great recorded training from their first session on how to do all these things that we can go through together. I can answer your questions. We can email Haley and they will answer our questions. Do you have a specific thing that you're concerned about? So the key here, what I'm trying to say, is sometimes we say things at surface level that we don't really mean, self-included. I've said I'm busy before when really what I meant was I'm freaking scared, or I don't know if I can do this. And so we're gonna do another round of yes and emojis, y'all. Put a yes or emoji in the chat if you have ever in your life thought, and ever could be today, it could be a week ago, it could be 10 years ago. Put a yes and emoji in the chat if you've ever thought, I've never fundraised before. I'm not sure I know how to do this. Everyone ever has said that. Yes. Yep. All right. Put a yes or emoji in the chat if you ever thought, I'm not wealthy. I don't have wealthy friends. Okay, we're getting yeses. I'm not sure my friends will donate to my cause. I'm not sure my friends will actually donate. All right. Getting some yeses here. I'm not sure my friends will fundraise for my cause. Oh my God, Haley, maybe they'll give 10 bucks. Are they actually going to give their time to join as a team member with me and do this? All right, got some more yeses flying in here. Congrats, y'all. You're human. You did it. You had a very human thought. And the way in which we overcome this is by really getting at our feelings of efficacy, our feelings that our actions matter and make a difference. If you're here today, very lovingly, your efficacy might not totally be there, but you're there enough to say, I want to build a fundraising team. So we're not thinking about you right now. What we're doing is we're thinking about those 2 to 3 people that you're going to ask to join your team, okay? Our lovely partner, Power Labs, has broken down 4 common types of efficacy that we can lack that makes it so something that we otherwise could do, we have the ability and follow through to do, we just say no to because we're too scared of. I'm going to walk through these one by one, and then we're going to take some time to reflect and strategize together. First is self-efficacy, that they're capable of helping. That is Ellie saying, I've never fundraised before. I don't know if I can do it. I don't know if I have the skill set. Second, response efficacy, that their voice will be heard. This is the vulnerability piece that we were talking about in the last session about asking our people for money. Will my friends really donate? I'm not sure they're gonna be receptive to me. Third is collective efficacy, where acting together is more effective than acting alone. That gets into the, I don't know, fundraising is hard. It's really unpopular. People love canvassing, not fundraising. Are you sure people want to do that? This fourth and final one is something that I think is infecting a lot of us on the left, if I'm being quite honest with you. It's feeling that the solutions we're pushing for will solve the problem. And I don't think a lot of us on the left right now feel like grassroots fundraising will do it. It shows in the budgets of our organizations. They are 80+% funded by foundations and wealthy individuals. And so the way that that shows up if we're lacking that kind of efficacy is thinking, I feel like only wealthy people can make an impact with donations, and I don't have wealthy friends. So y'all, you're troubleshooters here, you're organizers. In the Zoom chat, I would like for you to write down a concern someone might say if you ask them to join your fundraising team. Think in their perspective. What is something that someone might say that they're concerned about if you ask them to join your fundraising team? I don't have enough time. Definitely. That comes up. What else? Money gives me the ick. I'm fundraising for too many things right now. What else we got, y'all? I don't think I have the skills to do it. Absolutely. Overwhelmed, completely. I'm working on getting people elected. Okay, as folks are filling in a concern that someone might have in their networks, I can't imagine myself in that role. Go to your own message and reply with what you would say to address that person's concerns. Flip the script. What would you say to address that person's concerns? Oh, yes, I love this, Adelaide. We can prioritize or combine goals as a response to I'm fundraising for too many things right now. Skylar, who said, I don't have enough time. I can help you fit this into whatever time you have available. I try to time box my fundraising so that fits into 1 to 2 hours per week. That's great. Money gives me the ick. Money can bring up a lot of feelings for many folks. It's okay to feel you are feeling some sort of way about this. Is there something specific that it can bring up for you? Y'all are already problem solvers, organizers in all the ways in your lives, whether you are new to this or you've been doing this for over a decade. It is showing in the chat. And this is an exercise that you can do to help prepare yourself inevitably. When you have an anxious thought of, oh my God, if I asked Kelsey to join my team, what if they say, put what you're afraid that they're going to say down, and then write down a little bit what you can say to respond to their needs. Everyone has to start at the beginning to develop their skills. Yes, Teresa, 100% true. And our role here, again, as the asker, we are focused on how can we support these people who have the passion, ability, and follow through to see themselves as someone with passion, ability, and follow through and be able to do it. All right, my friends. Snowflake model. What the heck is she? She's a cute little image on the right. You can see here, it's a whole lot of people, a whole lot of arrows. What do these people and arrows mean? What the snowflake model is, and it's a really popular model for distributed organizing across all different kinds of organizations, base building, electoral, or otherwise. Obama 08, their campaign did a lot of this. It's leadership that's distributed and builds mutual accountability. It's an MLM for the social justice movement, y'all. It is thinking about, okay, not only am I responsible for the tasks that I have to do, in this case, fundraising my networks, I am also responsible for identifying, recruiting, and developing leaders. So like a snowflake pattern, it keeps going out there. Might be starting with you today, you and a few friends. She grows and grows and grows. So in your team, this is how the campaign life cycle can look, and we would argue should look. You're going to plan a 7 to 10 day campaign together with a goal and a deadline. We're looking to raise $10,000 in 10 days. Whatever number and date line might be, if you're curious about how to do that, again, reference our first training in the series to get those details. Before the campaign, so this is before the 7 to 10 days, you're going to support each other to be ready to have those conversations within your personal networks. So that means you do the list building, you do the pitch crafting. This is all talked about in the first session of our series. You can dive deeper there. Throughout the campaign, here's what you're doing the 7 to 10 day sprint with your people as you're making those asks. You're giving daily updates to the team saying, hey, I asked 5 people today. This person pledged $50. This person said no. What I learned from the person saying yes was blank. What I learned from the person saying no was this other blank. You're also updating the broader community. So for people that donated, people that you think could donate, sharing that progress with them and celebrating with them too. So saying, hey, we're halfway to our goal. Can you help us get there? You've seen that language before. You know what I'm talking about. Troubleshooting is going to be inevitable. I have to say it right here, right now. There's going to be a lot of things on the fly that you don't expect. Question that a potential donor might have. Oopsie daisy, broken links for donating links, whatever it might be. The key piece is that y'all are doing this together and troubleshooting on the spot. And finally, an important thing is data tracking. So having y'all, it could be as simple as a Google sheet, but sharing a list of all of your people, who you've asked, who said yes to contributing, who actually contributed and how much. All of those resources are from session 1 if you want to dive into those. As needed, if there are people that are super excited about what you're doing and they're like, oh, I can do this too, and you have the capacity to train them, have them join your team. If you don't have the capacity right in this campaign, what you can do is say, hey, we're in the weeds right now, but let's come back to this at the end because I would really love for you to spin up your own campaign with your own set of people. Adjusting goal is also something really important for us to think about. We're in the 7 to 10 day sprint, especially if it's our first time fundraising. Some folks come to us and they're like, wait, shoot, I have more people power than I thought because our goal was $600 and we're 5 hours in and we've already raised that. What do we do? If you need more resources, raise that goal and provide rationale for why. Oh my gosh, it's so great. We hit $600 in just 5 hours and our community needs are so deep because XYZ. So now we are raising the goal to $3,000. We would love your support today to be able to do that for us. Another end of the spectrum is sometimes, and self-included, I've done this. We're a little bit Delulu Bear, and we say, hey, in 7 to 10 days, we can totally raise $500,000 amongst 3 of us. Yeah, we can do that. And then you're on day 2 and you're like, there's $1,100 raised. I mean, $1,100 is brilliant, beautiful, can do a lot of things. And you might need to adjust the goal back to something that's more right size to inspire more people to give. So maybe you bring $500,000 down to $5,000 for this time around. And you can think about in future campaign cycles, how to build out more infrastructure so that you can get toward the $500,000 that you're looking for. Throughout the campaign, you also want to give yourself a little bit of energy for the after campaign piece, because oftentimes people kind of crash at the end. They're like, oh, did all my asks, we like hit our goal, or maybe didn't, but we learned some things. It's really important while the energy is fresh, while your reflections are fresh, to go back to your people, your fundraising team, and your donors to thank them, especially if you're doing this again, but just always, because gratitude is important as a human being. Evaluate what worked and didn't work. Something that we do at Donor Organizer Hub, it can take as little as 15 minutes, is go through what'd you like, what'd you learn, what'd you lack, what'd you long for. Go through that, put it on paper, and then go crash. And then developing new teams. So thinking about those people that raised their hand and you didn't have the capacity for them, or you kind of noticed, hey, they could be a potential future leader. The subject of coaching. When do we coach? We coach if we're starting a new team. So if you're here and you're brand spanking new to this and you want to build your team, congrats, you're going to be a coach by default. But also, you're going to become a coach once your network is tapped. We recommend that one individual person holds no more than 5 coaching relationships at a time. For this assumption here, we're assuming you are not fundraising staff. If you are fundraising staff on the call today, hi, we love you. You can probably take on more. But if you're an everyday person with jobs, dependents, and other things in your life, let's keep it to 5 or less. We recommend 1 to 3. What coaching is a Donor Organizer Hub? We kind of keep it broad here. It's support, it's accountability, resources, team building, troubleshooting. The underlying piece of it is it's developing future leadership in others. We have a stronger sense of what it isn't. And what it isn't, it's not giving all the answers. It's not, Ellie comes to me, they want to fundraise for this youth organizing cause, and me going, okay, you want to talk to your dad. Here's how I would talk to my dad. You talk to your dad this way. Ellie knows their dad better than I know their dad. Ellie knows how to communicate with their people, what their defaults are in terms of how they relate to other people. I don't need to be prescribing for them. We also don't want to make things as easy as possible. And this is actually the most common mistake that we see when people try to build out their volunteer fundraising teams, is they're like, oh, well, it's so hard, so we're gonna make it as easy as possible for you. We're gonna make you this document, and there's all these copy and paste where you sound like a cute little robot and it's not in your voice, and you're gonna put them on social media and in your email. So not only are you blasting, but you're not sounding in your own voice. That doesn't build leadership. It doesn't take all the time in the world to do the prompt of building a fundraising pitch in the format that we talk about in the first session in this series. At most, it probably takes 15 minutes. If you want somebody in your team, you want to ask them for 15 minutes of their time to develop something in their own voice. This is not a coaching training. We do coaching trainings at Donor Organizer Hub through our pure coaching cohorts. However, we're keeping it short and sweet today. If you have that advice monster kind of creep out of you, you just know, you're just sitting there, it's like, oh, Ellie, I want you to build your leadership, but I also just want to tell you how right I am and all the things that I think you should be doing. We offer this framework as a guide for our peer coaches that go into the field and trade other volunteer fundraisers to suppress that advice monster and the little demon that she is. So the GROW model of coaching, we specifically use at Donor Organizer Hub because it's pretty simple to remember. You don't need to do, dozens of hours or tens of thousands of dollars in coaching training to do it. And it helps people get to tangible results when you're talking about time-bound strategy. So let's start with G. G is, what do you want to accomplish in the conversation and in the world? So making it very clear to both you and them what they're hoping to get out of the conversation, whether it's a 15-minute quick check-in or it's a 60-minute ideation session, troubleshooting session. R is reality, what's happening, specifically thinking about what is or isn't in their control. Options, this is my favorite as a former theater kid. It's thinking yes and. We're not editing options. We're just putting them all out there. You can say the wild things, like I said at the top of, are you going to beg? Are you going to cry? Or are you going to ask the Trader Joe's worker? Sure, that's all there. Because when we allow for ourselves to yes and, for anybody that's done improv before, we know that the good stuff comes when we don't edit ourselves before we ideate. W is will. What will you do? So this is where people do make the decision. They decide, okay, how am I going to move forward? When am I going to do it? What supports do I need to get there? Hosting a kickoff. Now, a lot of us do very, very distributed organizing. And so it might not make sense for everybody to do a kickoff. Others of us, it might be we're kicking off with our besties. We all know each other pretty well. We might not need such a formal effort. However, what we will say is for those that do very bold fundraising goals where they're looking to bring on 20 volunteer fundraisers and they're looking to raise more than $10,000, we would strongly recommend considering to do this. And what we've seen in the field over the years is these 4 attributes make a kickoff successful so that you are most likely to achieve your goals in your fundraising campaign. The first piece is setting context. So sharing history, the importance of the cause, highlighting why this particular team in the room, the stakes, why now, sharing stories, the organizers in the room. You love your public narrative, feel free to use it, get fancy, get fun, get nerdy. For those of us who are like, what the heck is public narrative? What are you talking about? Just don't worry about it. You can look at it another time if you'd like, but it can be as simple as just asking, hey, can you tell me about yourself? What inspires you to be here? Put people in breakouts, share around in small groups, however you want to do it. Confronting fears. We did some exercises in the first part of this fundraising training series that really got at y'all's fears pretty quickly and helped us collectively overcome that so that we could enter into the space of fundraising strategizing. So reference some of those in part 1 of the 3-part series for that. The final part is taking some action. So setting the team goals and norms, building lists of who to ask, crafting pitches, and role-playing the ask. Play and practice is a way for us to take the figurative into the literal. For some of us, it becomes really, we're like, oh yeah, I can make a list of my people. I can craft a pitch. And then when it comes down to it, we're just like twiddling our thumbs like, I'm going to make another excuse for why I'm not going to do my asks. I need another infographic. I need another blurb. I want somebody to look this over again. And making it normalized that we are not perfect robots. We get better and more comfortable as we practice is something that allows for us to socialize fundraising in our team. So it's not just us doing this, it's the collective doing this. So the way that we recommend doing this at Donor Organizer Hub is first kind of going over, okay, if we're doing a fundraising pitch, what are the components of a fundraising pitch? In our first session, we talked through 5 different components that you can have in a fundraising pitch. The second is observe. So witnessing people do this in practice, playing the role of asker, being asked. Practice then becomes giving everybody the opportunity. Then the final step is debrief. And I would argue that this is the most important step, one not to miss, because oftentimes we learn just as much from reflecting as we do doing. All right, providing ongoing support and community. We've talked a whole bunch about this today. These are just 3 other quick pieces of best practices that we have seen in organizations and in small collectives, informal, where volunteer fundraising has thrived. The first is sharing appreciation. I read this book called Dollar Dash, The Behavioral Economics of Peer-to-Peer Fundraising, so you didn't have to, but there's decades of research on peer-to-peer fundraising in the medical research space that shows time and time again, people aren't most motivated by the mission itself. People aren't most motivated by incentives like the things of, oh, if you make the most calls, you get a t-shirt. In fact, incentives are demotivating. Mission, important, but not all of it. What gets people coming back time and time again and saying yes to your ask to join their team is recognition. The specific piece that, was lifted in the chat about when the ask was, oh, I was thinking exactly of you. When I told Ellie, you are the most meticulous person I know, both big picture and detail oriented. People should know those things about why they could be a great fundraiser. Second is blending formal and informal in gatherings, especially when we're talking about sprints. It can feel, oh my gosh, we have to, be business only. We're going to build our lists. We're going to draft our pitches. Where you can really be in communion with one another, have some snacks, share some goss, build some relationships. This is especially important if you're doing this more than one time around. Final step, providing async and synchronous support. What do I mean by asynchronous and synchronous? Asynchronous is when y'all are not intentionally gathered together, but inevitably things come up. Oh, I just got an email from my uncle asking about some weird esoteric thing with the cause that I have no idea about. How can I ask other people? Synchronous is when we spend intentional time together to work toward our goal. So with asynchronous pieces, toolkit, like I mentioned earlier with toolkit, we want to avoid being too copy paste robot. There can be certain things that we add in there, certain rationales of it is important for our cause, for our organization to say these things, to not say these things, but at the same time, leaving some breathing room for people to create their own where there is flexibility. And asynchronous also is, how are y'all communicating digitally? I know we are all so sick of all of them. WhatsApp, Signal, Slack, email threads, they all sound in their own way kind of ick, but you kind of have to pick the least icky of the icks for you to be able to communicate with one another as you're going day to day in the campaign. Synchronously, thinking about, especially during the campaign, if you're playing the role of coach, holding office hours with your people to help them troubleshoot and ideate, or if you're all doing it together, doing a community call where y'all are putting yourselves on mute and making those calls. All right, my friends. So this is just like a little gift for you for later. If you're thinking of what do I do with this team? How do I build each other's skills? How do we build our relationships? How do we work toward our goals? This is a list of different trainings and gatherings that we have witnessed, that we have facilitated, that we have seen be really supportive for people in building their team toward big goals. Now we're talking about next steps. So as much as I can be a fun person to hang out with for an hour and change, no 90-minute training is going to necessarily cover all of the things. Our next thing is going to be specifically on donor engagement. It's when the snowflake model stops snowflaking. It's thinking about how do we build a community of donors as a part of our base that are committed to our cause, that are also going to do things that freak them out a little, like fundraising for us. When we're talking about ongoing support, I want each and every one of you to not only hit your goals, but surpass them, to surprise yourselves at how much you could raise for how many people could join your teams. And so we offer pro bono coaching for volunteer fundraisers. Staff in the room, we love you. We have a sliding scale for you. And this is a way for you to come with your specific idea or challenge that has been holding you up and preventing you from being able to live your fundraising dreams. So please sign up. This is a very underutilized resource of Donor Organizer Hub. For staff, we have a community of practice coming up. We have one every month. It's a drop-in session for development staff to step away from, oh my gosh, I need to reach my budget, to how can we apply these models of community organizing into our fundraising efforts. And so we're going to be doing a scenario planning session. I hear there's an election in November. We'll talk through different scenarios, and we're going to play the roles of different kinds of constituents within the donor and funder ecosystem to think about how they would respond. And we'll give you a little toolkit that exists in the universe for you to bring a deeper scenario planning into your organization if y'all haven't done such things yet. Y'all, I would not be living into our values if I did not give y'all a fundraising pitch when I am asking you to make hard and direct asks yourself. We don't just talk the talk at fundraising for Donor Organizer Hub. We don't just bring people together to learn the basics of fundraising. We really do talk about turning donors into fundraisers. And specifically, thinking about, okay, you raised $500 from your friends and family. how can you get 1 to 3 other friends to do that so you can double, quadruple, tenfold what you originally thought was possible? It's the force multiplier effect. We are basically running an MLM for the social justice movement, y'all. And I want us to take a second to think about within our networks, all of the people that we know are aligned with our values, where all they're doing to take action is posting on social media right now. They very well could have the ability, the passion, and the follow through to become volunteer fundraisers. And it's not all on you to do this work. That's exactly why Donor Organizer Hub exists. We are here to support you in becoming your truest volunteer fundraising self, in becoming a coach, and in having other people become fundraisers and coaches themselves. And if you don't want to take our word for it, that's cool. You can take the word from Marissa Hirsch, who I will read a loving quote that she provided for us recently. Donor Organizer Hub got our team talking about donor organizing and fundraising in ways we never had. We were able to raise more money from more people than we ever thought possible and ever before. We are looking to raise $12,000 to provide 12 trainings that we previously did not expect over the next 3 months to meet this moment of mobilization. And so I would love to ask for you all, for those of us that are wealthy and owning class in the room, can you contribute so that we can have another free training out there for folks at $1,000 cost? For my middle class folks in the room, can you chip in $100? For my poor and working class folks in the room, can you contribute $10? I want you to think about not just what is your stake at hand, but what is the stake of other people if we can turn even just 1% of the donors in our network into fundraisers. And so I would love for you to think about what are your stakes to building a movement of volunteer fundraisers, where volunteer fundraising is as cool as canvassing and phone banking and disruptive action. So we will use every single dollar that goes toward us to build a multiracial, cross-class community and base of donors. As was done in the previous session, I'm going to do exactly what I taught, which is smile for 20 seconds. Ellie has put in the chat a link to donate and also information if you'd like to donate in other ways beyond the linkage. And then we'll go to Q&A, my friends. Love y'all.